Maya Chen sat at her desk at 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes before anyone else arrived, the way she'd done almost every weekday for the past 3 years. The office was still quiet. No phones ringing, no forced laughter from the break room, no Tyler breezing in late with his iced coffee and that easy smile that made everyone forget he never actually did anything. She opened her laptop and pulled up the Sanderson retail report one more time. She'd finished it 2 nights ago, stayed until almost 9 to make sure every number was right, every insight was clear, every recommendation was backed by data. It was good work. She knew it was good work. The kind of work that, 3 years ago when she first started at Kellerman & Associates, she thought would be enough. She was 33 now, old enough to know better. The email had come in yesterday afternoon, short and casual, from David Kellerman himself, her boss, the founder, the man whose name was on the door and whose son had been hired 6 months ago as a junior strategist, a title that meant nothing except that Tyler Kellerman could show up whenever he wanted and leave whenever he felt like it. Maya, great work on the Sanderson analysis. Tyler will present it in tomorrow's client meeting. Make sure he has everything he needs. Thanks. DK. She'd read it 3 times, sitting very still at her desk, feeling something cold settle in her chest. Tyler would present it. Not Maya will present it with Tyler's support. Not Maya and Tyler will co-present. Tyler, alone, her work. Her 3 years of building trust with Sanderson's marketing director, her months of data analysis, her late nights cross-referencing consumer behavior trends and retail foot traffic patterns, her strategic recommendations that could actually save them from closing 2 underperforming locations. And Tyler, who had spent the last 6 weeks sitting in on her calls, nodding along, asking surface-level questions, contributing exactly nothing, would stand in front of the client and take credit for all of it. She hadn't responded to the email. What could she say? Actually, David, I wrote this entire report. Your son just watched. Sure, that would go over well. She was a senior analyst. Tyler was the boss's son. The math was simple. Now, at 7:45 a.m., she sat in the empty office and told herself it didn't matter. She'd done the work. She knew she'd done the work. That had to be enough. It wasn't, but she didn't know what else to do. Tyler arrived at 9:20, carrying his usual cold brew and wearing a button-down that probably cost more than Maya's car payment. He dropped his bag on his desk, 2 rows over from hers in the open floor plan, and shot her a grin. Morning, Maya. Big day, huh? She looked up from her screen, kept her face neutral. Morning? You ready for this? I'm kind of nervous, not gonna lie. He laughed, ran a hand through his hair. First big client presentation. Dad says Sanderson's a huge account. Maya's hands stilled on her keyboard. First big client presentation. As if he'd been working toward this, as if he'd earned it. You'll be fine, she said quietly. Yeah, I think so. I mean, the report's solid, right? I put a lot of work into it. Something tightened in her throat. I put a lot of work into it. She didn't correct him. She just nodded, turned back to her screen, and pretended to read an email she'd already read twice. Tyler didn't notice. He never noticed. He pulled out his phone, scrolled for a few minutes, then looked back over at her. Hey, do you have the final deck? I want to run through it a couple times before the meeting. She opened her email, attached the PowerPoint presentation, her presentation, the one she'd built slide by slide, the one with her voice and her structure and her analysis embedded in every transition, and sent it to him. Got it, he said. Thanks. He didn't ask if she wanted to go over it with him. Didn't ask if she had any last-minute notes, any context he should know, any details that didn't make it into the slides. He just opened the file and started scrolling through it like he was seeing it for the first time. Because he was. The meeting was at 11. Maya wasn't invited. She found out at 10:30 when Jessica from account management walked by and said, Good luck with Sanderson. I heard Tyler's presenting your report. That's so nice of you to let him take the lead. Maya looked up, confused. I'm not going? Jessica blinked. Oh, it's just Tyler and David in the conference room. I assumed you were staying back to work on the Harper project or something. Right, Maya said. Yeah, that makes sense. It didn't make sense. She'd been on every call with Sanderson for 3 years. She knew their marketing director by name, knew her kids' ages, knew which retail locations were struggling and why. She'd written the report they were about to discuss, and she wasn't invited to the meeting. Jessica smiled sympathetically and walked away. Maya sat very still at her desk, staring at her screen, her hands folded in her lap. Around her, the office buzzed with the usual mid-morning energy. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, someone microwaving something that smelled faintly like burnt popcorn. Everything was normal. Except that in the glass-walled conference room 20 feet away, Tyler Kellerman was standing at the head of the table in his expensive shirt and his easy confidence, holding a printout of her report, getting ready to present her work as his own. And his father, her boss, the man who'd hired her 3 years ago, who'd told her she had a future here, who'd promoted her to senior analyst last year with a 4% raise and a handshake, was sitting at the table, beaming with pride. She could see them through the glass. Tyler was talking, gesturing to the slides on the screen. David was nodding, smiling. The Sanderson team, 2 people Maya had spent hours on Zoom calls with, 2 people who trusted her, were leaning forward, engaged. Tyler was good at this part. The performance, the charm. He just wasn't good at the work, but no one in that room knew that. No one except Maya. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, David walked Tyler out, hand on his shoulder, still smiling. The Sanderson team shook Tyler's hand, thanked him, told him they were impressed. Maya watched from her desk, her stomach tight. Tyler walked back across the office floor like he'd just won something. "Crushed it," he said to no one in particular. A couple of the junior analysts looked up, smiled. "Nice job, man." "Yeah, thanks. Feels good." He sat down at his desk, pulled out his phone, and texted someone. Probably his girlfriend, probably his dad. Maya turned back to her screen and opened the Harper Project file. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself this was how it worked. She told herself she'd done the right thing by staying quiet, by not making waves, by being a team player. But her hands were shaking. 2 hours later, David called Tyler into his office. Maya didn't think much of it at first. Father and son, probably celebrating. Probably planning Tyler's next big project, his next opportunity to look good in front of clients while someone else did the work. But 5 minutes in, she saw Tyler's expression change through the glass. He wasn't smiling anymore. David was holding a piece of paper, pointing at something on it, asking a question. Tyler was shaking his head, gesturing, talking fast. David's face was unreadable. Then David stood up, walked to his office door and opened it. "Maya, can you come in here for a minute?" Her stomach dropped. She stood slowly, walked across the office floor, feeling everyone's eyes on her. When she stepped into David's office, Tyler was sitting in the chair across from the desk, his jaw tight, his arms crossed. David gestured to the second chair. "Have a seat." She sat. David placed a piece of paper on the desk between them. It was one of her working drafts, one of the early versions of the Sanderson report, the one she'd printed out weeks ago to review by hand. The margins were covered in her handwriting. Notes, questions, ideas, arrows connecting data points, a comment in blue ink. Check Q3 foot traffic versus email open rates. Possible correlation? "Tyler," David said calmly, "can you walk me through this note?" Tyler stared at the paper. Which one?" "This one," David pointed. "About the Q3 foot traffic correlation. Sanderson's team just emailed asking for more detail on that analysis. They said it was one of the most interesting insights in the report." Tyler hesitated. "Right. Yeah. So, basically, I noticed that..." He trailed off. David waited. Tyler looked at the paper again. "I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. The data shows..." "This is your handwriting, right?" David asked. Silence. Tyler glanced at Maya. She didn't move. "Tyler," David said again, his voice still calm, but with an edge now. "Is this your handwriting?" We worked on this together," Tyler said quickly. "Maya helped with some of the research, but I pulled it all together." David picked up another sheet, another one of Maya's drafts, covered in her notes. "And this one?" Tyler said nothing. David looked at Maya. "Maya," he said quietly, "did you write this report?" She met his eyes. For 3 years, she'd stayed quiet. She'd smiled. She'd been nice. She'd been a team player. But sitting in that office, looking at her own handwriting on the page, she felt something shift. "Yes," she said, "I wrote it." The silence in David Kellerman's office lasted 3 seconds. It felt longer. Tyler shifted in his chair, his face tight. "Dad, that's not... Look, we collaborated on this. Maya did some of the data work, but I was the one who shaped the strategy. I pulled everything together." David didn't look at him. He was still looking at Maya. "You wrote this report," he said again. Not a question this time. "Yes," Maya said. Her voice was steady. I wrote it. All of it. Tyler sat in on a few calls, but he didn't contribute to the analysis or the recommendations. Tyler's jaw clenched. That's not true. I was involved the whole time. You were copied on emails, Maya said quietly. You didn't respond to most of them. I was observing, learning the process. That's what junior strategists do. You presented it as your own work, Maya said. Her voice didn't rise. She wasn't angry. She was just stating a fact. David set the paper down on his desk, leaned back in his chair, and rubbed his face with both hands. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he looked at Tyler. Go back to your desk. I need to talk to Maya alone. Tyler stood, his movements stiff. Dad, go. Tyler left without looking at her. The door closed. David exhaled slowly, stared at the papers on his desk, her handwriting, her notes, her work, and shook his head. How long has this been going on? Maya hesitated. This is the first time he's presented something I wrote. But it's not the first time he's taken credit. She didn't answer. David looked at her. Maya, I need you to be honest with me. Has my son been coasting on your work since he got here? She chose her words carefully. He's still learning. But yes, most of what he's put his name on, I wrote. David closed his eyes. Why didn't you say something? Because he's your son. The honesty hung in the air between them. David nodded slowly. Yeah, I get that. He paused. I'm sorry. Maya didn't know what to say to that. I'm going to fix this, David said. I'll talk to the Sanderson team. I'll make sure they know you wrote the report. Okay. And I'll talk to Tyler. Okay. David looked at her for a long moment. You've been here 3 years. You've never caused a problem. You've never asked for anything. You just do the work. Maya nodded. That's why I didn't see it, David said quietly. Because you made it easy not to. It wasn't an accusation. It was just the truth. And Maya knew he was right. She'd made herself invisible. She'd stayed quiet. She'd been afraid to make waves, afraid to be seen as difficult, afraid that speaking up would cost her the job she'd worked so hard to keep. And it had cost her anyway, just in a different way. I'll do better, David said. I promise. Maya nodded again, stood, and walked out of the office. The rest of the day was strange. People kept glancing at her. Word had spread, quietly, the way it always did in offices, that something had happened between Tyler and Maya and David. No one knew exactly what, but they knew it was serious. Tyler stayed at his desk, headphones on, staring at his screen. He didn't look at her. Jessica from account management stopped by Maya's desk around 3. Hey, you okay? I'm fine. I heard David pulled you into his office. Yeah. Jessica lowered her voice. Did something happen with the Sanderson report? Maya kept her eyes on her screen. It's handled. Jessica hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Well, if you need anything, thanks. She left. Maya kept working. She had the Harper project to finish, a proposal due Friday, 3 client emails to answer. The work didn't stop just because the world had tilted sideways for a few minutes. That was the thing about being good at your job. There was always more work. At 4:30, David sent an email to the Sanderson team. Maya saw it because he CC'd her. The subject line read, Correction RE Retail Strategy Report. She opened it. Team, I want to clarify that the strategic analysis and recommendations presented in today's meeting were authored by Maya Chen, our senior analyst. Tyler Kellerman supported the project in a junior capacity. Maya has been your primary point of contact for the past 3 years and will continue to lead on all Sanderson initiatives moving forward. Please direct any follow-up questions to her. Best, David Kellerman. Maya read it twice. Then she closed her laptop, picked up her bag, and left. That night, she sat in her apartment with a glass of wine she didn't drink and stared at the email on her phone. It should have felt like a win. David had corrected the record. He'd put her name on the work. He'd acknowledged what happened. But she kept thinking about the meeting she wasn't invited to. The moment Tyler stood in front of the client and said, I put a lot of work into it. The way everyone in the office had smiled at him, congratulated him, believed him. She kept thinking about how easy it had been for him, and how hard it had been for her to say one word. Yes, she should have said it 6 months ago. She should have said it the first time Tyler took credit for a deck she built, or a memo she wrote, or an insight she'd pulled from data he'd never even looked at. But she hadn't, because she was 33 years old, and she'd spent her whole career being told that good work spoke for itself. Except it didn't, not if someone else was louder. The next morning, Tyler didn't come in until 10. When he did, he walked straight to David's office and closed the door. Maya tried not to watch. She tried to focus on the Harper proposal, but she could see them through the glass. Tyler talking fast, gesturing, his face flushed. David sitting behind his desk, arms crossed, listening. The conversation lasted 15 minutes. When Tyler came out, his face was blank. He walked back to his desk, grabbed his bag, and left. He didn't come back that day, or the next. On Friday, David sent an internal email announcing that Tyler Kellerman had decided to pursue other opportunities and would be leaving the company effective immediately. Maya read the email at her desk, surrounded by the usual Friday afternoon hum of the office winding down, people talking about weekend plans, someone laughing too loud in the break room. She read it again. Tyler was gone. She didn't feel victorious. She didn't feel relieved. She just felt tired. That afternoon, David called her into his office again. She sat in the same chair she'd sat in 3 days ago when everything had unraveled. "I wanted to talk to you about what's next," David said. Maya nodded. "Tyler's gone. That leaves a gap on the strategy team. I'd like you to step into a lead role on client-facing projects. Official title change, salary adjustment, your own team." Maya looked at him. "Why now?" David didn't flinch. "Because I should have done it a year ago. And because I didn't see what was happening until you made me see it. I didn't make you see it. You asked me a direct question, and I answered. You could have lied." "I could have," Maya said. "But I didn't." David nodded slowly. "I know this doesn't fix what happened, but it's a start." Maya thought about that. About 3 years of staying quiet, of doing good work in the background, of watching other people get credit, get promoted, get seen. She thought about Tyler walking into that meeting with her report in his hands, her insights in his mouth, her future in his back pocket, and she thought about the moment she'd finally said the truth out loud. "Yes, I wrote it. I want my name on everything I do from now on," she said. David met her eyes. "Done. And I want to be in the room. Every client meeting, every pitch, every presentation. If my work is being used, I'm there." "Agreed. And I want a real salary adjustment. Not 4%, a real one." David smiled faintly. "I'll send you an offer letter by Monday." Maya stood. "Okay." She walked to the door, then stopped and turned back. "David." "Yeah? Thank you for asking who wrote the notes." He nodded. "I should have asked sooner." Maya walked out of David's office and sat down at her desk. The office was still humming with the usual Friday energy. People packing up early, making plans, already halfway out the door in their minds. But Maya just sat there, hands folded on her keyboard, staring at her screen without really seeing it. Tyler was gone. She was getting promoted. She was getting paid what she should have been paid a year ago. It should have felt like enough, but something was still sitting heavy in her chest. She opened her email and scrolled back through the last 6 months. Every project Tyler had been assigned to, every deck she'd built that he'd presented, every client call where she'd done the talking and he'd gotten the credit in the follow-up email. There it was. All of it. A paper trail of her own silence. She'd let it happen. Not because she was weak, not because she didn't know her worth, but because she'd been afraid. Afraid of being labeled difficult. Afraid of losing her job. Afraid that speaking up would cost her more than staying quiet. And maybe it would have. But staying quiet had cost her too. She closed her email and looked around the office. Jessica was laughing with someone by the printer. 2 of the junior analysts were debating where to get drinks after work. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. Except it wasn't. Because Tyler wasn't the only problem. The problem was that no one had questioned it. No one had asked why Maya wasn't in the meeting. No one had wondered why Tyler, who'd been there 6 months, was suddenly presenting a report on a client Maya had managed for 3 years. They'd just accepted it, because that's how it worked. The boss's son gets the opportunities. The quiet woman who does good work gets to keep doing it in the background, until she doesn't. Maya picked up her phone and opened her notes app. She started typing. A list. Every project she'd worked on in the last 3 years. Every client she'd managed. Every report she'd written. Every strategy she'd built. Her work. Her name. Her voice. She was done being invisible. On Monday morning, the offer letter was waiting in her inbox. Senior strategy lead. 30% salary increase. Her own team. Her name on client emails. A seat at every table. She read it twice, then signed it and sent it back. At 9:15, David called an all-hands meeting in the main conference room. Maya walked in with everyone else, coffee in hand, and stood near the back. People were whispering, speculating. Tyler's sudden departure had left questions. People wanted answers. David stood at the front of the room and waited until everyone settled. "I know there's been some confusion about recent changes," he said. "I want to address that directly." The room went quiet. "Tyler Kellerman is no longer with the company. That decision was mutual, and I'm not going to get into specifics. What I will say is this: I made a mistake." People glanced at each other. David continued, "I brought my son into this company because I thought it would be good for him. I thought he'd learn. I thought he'd grow. But I didn't pay attention to how that decision affected the people who were already here, doing excellent work, and not getting the recognition they deserved." He paused. "Maya Chen has been with us for 3 years. She's managed some of our most important client relationships. She's written strategies that have saved accounts and generated revenue. And she's done all of that quietly, without asking for credit, without demanding recognition." Maya felt every eye in the room turn toward her. "That ends today," David said. "Effective immediately, Maya is our new senior strategy lead. She'll be managing client-facing projects, leading a team, and representing this company in every major pitch and presentation. If you've benefited from her work in the past, and most of you have, you'll now know her name." He looked directly at her. "Maya, would you like to say anything?" She hadn't expected that. For a moment she considered saying no, considered just nodding, sitting back down, letting the moment pass. But then she thought about the meeting she wasn't invited to, the report that had her name nowhere on it, the 3 years of being helpful, being nice, being quiet. She stepped forward. "I just want to say thank you," she said. Her voice was steady. "And I want to say something else." People were listening now. "For a long time, I thought good work was enough. I thought if I did my job well, people would notice, and some of you did, but a lot of you didn't. Because I didn't make you notice. I stayed in the background. I let other people take credit. I told myself it didn't matter as long as the work got done." She paused. "But it does matter. It matters who gets recognized. It matters who gets promoted. It matters whose name is on the work. Because when we don't pay attention to that, we create systems where the loudest person wins. Not the best person, not the person who actually did the work, just the person who's willing to take credit for it." The room was completely silent. "I'm not angry," Maya said. "I'm just done being quiet. So if you work with me moving forward, you're going to hear my voice, you're going to see my name, and you're going to know exactly who did the work." She looked around the room. "That's all." David nodded. "Thank you, Maya." People started clapping. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. Maya walked back to her spot near the wall, and the meeting continued. After the meeting, Jessica found her by the coffee machine. "That was incredible," she said. "It was honest," Maya said. "Still, it took guts." Jessica hesitated. "I'm sorry I didn't say anything." "About the Sanderson meeting, I should have asked why you weren't there." "It's okay." "It's not, though. I knew something was off. I just didn't want to get involved." Maya looked at her. "I get it. I didn't want to get involved either. That's how this stuff happens." Jessica nodded. "Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you said something." "Me too." That afternoon, Maya got an email from the Sanderson marketing director. The subject line read, "Thank you." She opened it. "Maya, I just wanted to reach out personally. I received David's email last week clarifying your role in the strategy report, and I have to say, I wish I'd known sooner. I've always appreciated working with you, and now I understand why everything always ran so smoothly. You're the reason this partnership works. I look forward to continuing to work with you directly. Let's schedule a call next week to discuss Q1 planning." Best, Caroline Maya read it twice. Then she forwarded it to David with a short note. "This is what it looks like when the right person gets credit." David replied 5 minutes later. "Agreed. Let's make sure it keeps happening." By the end of the week, Maya had her new office. It wasn't huge, but it had a door, a window, a desk that wasn't in the middle of an open floor plan where everyone could see her screen. It had her name on a placard outside. Maya Chen, Senior Strategy Lead. She stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at it. 3 years. 3 years of proving herself. 3 years of doing the work and watching other people take the credit. And now, finally, her name was on the door. She walked inside, set her bag down, and sat at her desk. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mom. "How's work?" Maya smiled. "Good. Really good. Her mom replied immediately, "I'm proud of you." Maya stared at the message for a long moment. She thought about all the times she'd wanted to quit, all the times she'd gone home angry, exhausted, invisible. She thought about the moment in David's office when he'd asked her directly, "Did you write this report?" And she'd said yes. One word, one honest answer. That's all it had taken. Not to fix everything, not to erase 3 years of being overlooked, but to change what happened next. On Friday afternoon, Maya was in her office reviewing a new client proposal when David knocked on her open door. "Got a minute?" "Sure." He sat down across from her. "I wanted to check in, see how the transition's going." "It's going well," Maya said. "I'm meeting with the team on Monday to set expectations and divide up the Sanderson account work." "Good." David hesitated. "I also wanted to say something else." Maya waited. "I talked to Tyler last weekend. He's angry. He thinks I threw him under the bus." "Did you?" David smiled faintly. "No, I held him accountable. There's a difference." He paused. "But he's my son, so it's complicated." "I'm sure it is. He's not a bad kid. He's used to things coming easy. He didn't understand that taking credit for someone else's work isn't just unfair, it's theft." Maya nodded. "I should have taught him that a long time ago," David said quietly. "I should have taught him to earn things, to respect the people around him, to understand that being the boss's son doesn't make you special. It makes you responsible." "It's not too late," Maya said. David looked at her. "You think so?" "I think people can learn, if they want to." "Yeah." He stood. "Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you for not letting me ignore what was happening, for telling me the truth." "You asked," Maya said simply. "I just answered. A lot of people wouldn't have. A lot of people don't get asked." David nodded slowly. "Fair point." He left. Maya turned back to her computer and opened her calendar. Monday, team meeting, client call with Sanderson, strategy review for the Harper project. Tuesday, pitch presentation for a new account. Her name was listed as lead presenter. Wednesday, one-on-one meetings with her new team members. Her calendar was full. Her inbox was full. Her office was full of work that had her name on it. She leaned back in her chair and looked out the window at the city below. For 3 years, she'd been afraid that speaking up would cost her everything, but staying silent had cost her more. And now, finally, she had her voice back. Not because someone gave it to her, but because she'd used it. That night, Maya walked out of the office at 6 o'clock, not 8, not 9, and took the train home. She stopped at the corner market, bought fresh flowers, and carried them up to her apartment. She put them in a vase on her kitchen table, poured herself a glass of wine, and sat down with her laptop. She opened a blank document and started writing. Not a report, not a strategy, not work, just thoughts about what it means to be good at your job and still be invisible, about what it costs to stay quiet, about what it takes to finally say, "Yes, I did that. That was me." She didn't know if she'd ever share it. Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. But it felt good to write it down, to name it, to own it. She looked at the flowers on the table, bright and alive in the evening light, and she smiled. Justice wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, steady, real. It was her name on the door, her voice in the room, her work, finally, undeniably, hers.